Yes. So Raffi's pulling up, and she's asked if there's one or two people here in the room, would you like to share your vision and the authority upon which you stand? And you may know this has been something that we've been doing each week.
Okay.
Each meeting.
I'd be happy to do it.
Go ahead, Kaylee.
So my vision is a world where every single person loves themselves, sees themselves with the same eyes that God sees them. And then when we all love ourselves, it'll give us the capacity to love everybody else. And I stand on the authority of I love myself, and I know God loves me deeply, passionately, and wildly. I know that's absolutely a fact. And why wouldn't God love me that way?
Wonderful.
Amen.
Is there somebody else here that would like to share your vision? Sally?
Yeah, I want my old neighborhood back. I grew up in the loveliest neighborhood in the world. It was a melting pot. It was 5 blocks long, and it had every possible color, language, culture, religion. And we all were close. We were close neighbors. I was a little kid, and there were a lot of little kids. We didn't all speak the same language, but we all ended up loving each other and playing, and all the grown-ups watched over us. That's what I want back.
Good. Somebody online like to share? I see Elizabeth shaking her head.
Okay. I'll just jump in then. So my vision is to live in a world where everybody is just so full of themselves that they cannot be, so what's the name? So you're so confident in yourself. You're so confident in all the divinity. You know, I want to see a world where everybody just knows that they are the expression of the divine and acts that way too.
Amen.
Amen. Anyone else online? On the phone? You can unmute yourself.
This is Linda.
Hi.
And hi. I couldn't get on my tablet. I envision a world where everyone knows and feels that everyone matters and everyone cares for everyone.
Wonderful. All right, Raffi, you are fun.
Well, we have some handout. Excuse me, we have some handouts that are being prepared that will be in here for a moment. But I just want to stop for a moment and kind of take a breath. We've been covering a lot of ground. Excuse me, we've been covering a lot of ground. And I know that some of the areas that we have been covering have been pretty difficult. The part that we've been talking about lately that I want to continue on with today is how, in order to keep the systems of oppression going, in order to keep the isms going, they impact everyone. They impact everyone. There's this theme that I keep coming back to of this idea of being blind, and the fact that we use our blindness as a way to show that we're liberal, that somehow we are evolved, and that we are above it all. But it is the blindness that is a part of the problem. It's a big part of the problem. And when we get into this idea of the blindness, and I'm trying to tell you, I don't see that you're different. What I'm also saying is I can't see how I'm privileged. See? And I can't level the playing field if I don't know, in fact, that it's not level. And part of the way that we keep this going is that we make it seem like issues of race or oppression or any of that stuff is about the other person, or it's about the other people. You know what? I'm going to move this, if you don't mind, this way, because I don't feel so weird talking like I'm talking into some kind of vacuum. I can talk to people. Yeah. So when we're looking, I know it makes a bigger swing for everybody else, but it's just too weird. Sorry. So I realize that a lot of this is hard and a lot of this is difficult, but there's a way in which people don't realize that they have been equally oppressed by the same issues or by the same things. And what we're going to do today is we're going to just take a look a little bit about how that works. Because when we speak of oppression, when we speak of racism, when we speak of these things, we're always talking about it from the standpoint of, quote unquote, the ones who've been discriminated against, but we don't realize that it involves everybody. And there's a new conversation that has to happen. The conversation of just how poorly other people have been treated isn't flying, because the response back always is, well, what does it have to do with me?
Right.
Well, we're going to see like how this has to do with us. like yes, it does have something to do with us. It's not just about those other people. It's about the way that the systems have been developed. The other thing that we're taking a look at clearly here is how there are multiple Americas. There's not just one America. And it's the same thing all over the world, where there are pockets, there's discrepancies, there's incongruence, and we're not all having the same monolithic experience. So part of that I don't see is the evidence and the declaration that I can't see all of that. I can't see the variety, I can't see the diversity, I can't see where there are different things that are part of some people's realities that are not part of other people's realities, and I'm projecting mine onto everybody. I'm projecting mine onto everybody's. And a fundamental premise of this whole time together is that part of the definition of privilege is not having to see.
Yes.
That is part of the definition of the privilege itself, is I don't have to see. So too many of us in the quote unquote liberal courts have equated my not seeing with oneness. That if I see diversity, if I see variety, if I see the way that groups aren't being treated the same, then somehow or another I'm getting into duality and I'm not getting into the oneness. But it's the other way around. It is completely the other way around, where the stance for oneness compels me, impels me to see. The stance for oneness means inclusive. Now, it's very interesting in the English language where we just have one word for one, whether it's one, a singular one, or one, a united one. We only have that one word. So even in scripture, when it says like the Lord our God is one, it actually is a plural one. Interestingly enough, it actually is a plural one. And part of this oneness that we're seeking isn't the melting pot, isn't where every single person is exactly like everybody else, but this oneness that's a beautiful blend. I think of it like a musical chord, for example. The whole world's not going to sing in unison, but it doesn't mean that we can't be in harmony. And harmony itself means different pitches, different tones. There's no harmony if it's one note. You can't harmonize with one note. You know, in order to have harmony, there have to be some different notes, but the way in which they are configured with one another as to be in a blend, as to be in a place of alignment. There's a practice that we use here called singing in the spirit, which is old Pentecostal practice that's actually out of African traditions. Everybody singing simultaneously, and it's sounding like just a lot of chaos. And you notice that there will be this moment where it all will blend together. This moment where everybody just kind of a magic wand just all winds up on the same chord. And that's pretty much how it is, that there's all of us out there in the world, our different religions, our different cultures. We're all doing our own prayers and doing our own thing. However, if we all keep moving towards the one, we're all going to wind up on a chord. We're going to wind up on some kind of blend that works for all of us. And that's what we're shooting towards now, is this blend that works for all of us. So before I go on with the things for today, were there any questions from where we have been? Things that have been, burning on your mind, or comments that you didn't have a chance to make before that you want to make now? Okay. And I do want to say one thing in regards to what you were saying, Callie. And I can really, really appreciate your experience, and I'm glad that you had that experience growing up. What I also want us to be aware of is that the experience is not necessarily the same for all the people in it. There's a wonderful book called The Help, and a movie version was made of, which quite frankly I don't endorse, because anyway. The book is excellent, and the audio program is one of the most brilliant things that I've ever heard. And I've been working on a course in my head to use that particular thing. And in The Help, it really is the coming of age story of the author, who's a young white woman. The movie version completely shifts the perspective around in terms of who the movie, who it's about. The Help is really about the woman. It's really about the white woman. And her experience growing up, right coming into age in the, in the 60s, and having her reality blown because she thought that everything was nice and hunky-dory and all the rest of this, and even things like how well received she was when she would go into the Black neighborhoods, with her family and whatnot. And then she had a chance to see what it was like for them, when the white people came in, or what was going on, or like what was happening. And she had a chance, and I love that book because it shows how the racism wasn't just against the Black people, but how it kept the white people in line. And the way that it brilliantly brings in the issues of not only class, but of gender as well. And she can easily start to see how her position as a female was so much aligned with what was going on with the marginalization in regards to race. And it's really, really a brilliant work, but I wanted to say that. So there's some comments, and we'll take some from the from people on the video too, before I get into some of today's stuff. Barbara, did you want to say something?
I was thinking about Kaylee's comment on Monday, and wanted to ask you to speak a little bit to the difference between acceptance and agreement.
Okay.
Because acceptance is like, I accept that this is what it is. I may not necessarily agree with it.
Yes.
But I can accept it. I can accept you, even though we're in disagreement about where we're coming from. I can accept that you are where you are.
I would say we would have to come to an agreement on what the word acceptance meant. Does accept because there can be an acceptance that's just an acquiescence. And that's part of the problem of where we are now with our societal things, where people have been like passively, or maybe not so passively, just accepting that things are changing and just accepting that things are changing. But there's really no shift in heart that's happening. So it's bubbling up now and it's spilling over, where this quote unquote acceptance can start to feel like stuff is being crammed down your throat. But can you accept and not agree? Oh, yes. And that's the challenge that we have anytime that we're up against social justice change. That if a law shifts, for example, or some social mores shifts, I may not agree with it, but if I accept that this is the new law, of the land, case in point, the marriage equality laws. There are a lot of people who are issuing marriage licenses that don't accept it, that really don't accept the fact that, or don't agree with the fact that same-sex couples should be married, but they are accepting it as the law without necessarily agreeing with it. I think the challenge that we have before us in doing this work now is, how can we put forth a new vision? How can we put forth a new vision that's not just about trying to fix where it is that we are, but to put forth a new vision that can be compelling enough to be able to have everybody step it up a bit. See, when you're doing social justice work, nonviolent social justice work, what you're doing is that you are working with the value systems of the dominant culture. And you are pointing out the ways in which their policies and protocols and practices of discrimination are actually inconsistent with the highest values that they hold of themselves. Did you get that? Okay. So when you're doing nonviolent social change work, the reason why you feel like you can even do it is because you know that the people that you're up against have an identity of themselves as being better than they are acting. More just, more moral, more fair, more kind, more compassionate, more religious, more whatever than what they are actually doing. But because of these blinders that we've been talking about, they're unable to see it. They're unable to see it. So in essence, what winds up happening, and I'm saying this kind of harshly, but what happens is that somebody like a Martin Luther King just completely pushes Christianity down the throats of white liberal Christians. A Gandhi comes along and he just pushes down the throats of the British their own law. He's a British lawyer, where it flicks around into saying to be a good Christian means that I have to put the white race above everybody else, and we've been in charge of the world. Is to turn it around and say, oh no, being a white Christian means that I have to have compassion for all fellow beings and live in a world that's just. So it becomes redefining, so to speak, what it means to be Christian, redefining what it means to be an American. This is what we were talking about earlier when we were looking at the Dred Scott decision. And remember, in that 7-2 decision, the Supreme Court came forward and said that it was in their estimation in 1857, that Africans were never intended to be citizens of the United States, whether they were free or not. Whether they are free or not, that it was never the intent of the founding fathers for Africans to be citizens in the United States. And so what happens for us where we are now is we got to go way back. When I say we have to start with vision, I mean that. we got to go way back, because we've been acting like we're all on the same page, that we all have the same values, that the structures have actually been made for everybody, and we've just gone a little awry. It really has been made for everybody, but we just haven't applied it as equally as it should be applied. And it's like, no, it was never intended for everybody to begin with. And we have to begin with that whole notion of the equality. It's that we have to speak this. We've got to speak it. So if we're talking about immigration, for example, it has to be more than, oh, like those poor immigrants, or gee, those Muslims that we're banning. It has to switch around to, look, I believe in religious freedom. Like, that's what I think that this nation has built on. And every religion should be able to be free in this nation. Every religion should be able to be free in this nation. And furthermore, I don't want to be denied the opportunity and the right to be able to interface with Muslims from around the world. Do you feel the difference in that?
Yes.
Then, well, they shouldn't be, allowed in here. No. I deserve the right. My children deserve the right. My congregation, my religious community deserves the right to be in fellowship with other religions. That is our religious right.
Yes.
Can you feel that's a different vision? That's a whole different vision. When we stop talking about, oh, well, the immigrants and they're here and they're undocumented and whatnot, is that, look, I love my neighbors. I love my neighbors all over this neighborhood. I love the people who are in this community. They are here, they are hardworking, they care, they're in our stores, they're in our streets. We are all here together. We're all here together. And I am not for breaking up families. I am here about how can we all find a way to make it. Having papers doesn't make you a more valuable person than not having papers. That's the stuff that those of us with papers have to say. That they're not any less than us because they don't have papers. Their lives aren't any less. They are just as equal as we are.
Yes.
Just as equal. As human beings, just as equal. And we can't treat any human being like things, like objects, like things. And the moment that we start that kind of labeling, immigrants, terrorists, criminals, homeless, it starts, Tillich referred to it as the I-thou relationship. Versus the I-it relationship. And we turn people into its instead of the thous. But until we realize that all those of us who are in positions of privilege, until we realize that all of this is going on to supposedly protect our position of privilege, it's not going to get anywhere. Hear what I'm saying. We are renouncing the privilege. This privilege that I'm supposed to have to be protected from all these terrorists who are Muslim and what, that's not a privilege I want. That's not a privilege to me. The privilege is in being able to be in fellowship. That's the privilege I want. I don't want the privilege, quote unquote, of being protected from all of these illegal aliens that are blah, blah, blah. No. The privilege I want is to be able to continue to live in community with the people who are actually working and helping to build this community. I can't even imagine what this place would be like if the undocumented workers weren't here. Hello? Hello? They are part of the community. They are a part of the community. It's not I'm here and they're like not here, that we are here. So you feel what I'm saying? It's denouncing that part that puts me up above. Say, no, you're not protecting my marriage by not letting them marry. Hello? That's not what I want. If you believe, then I believe in marriage. If I believe in marriage, then I believe in marriage, and everybody who wants to get married should be able to get married. How can you say they're anti-family when they want one? Hello? My family's not better than their family. The family's not better, and they are just as good as we are. See, it's a different argument than arguing why they're okay, or why we shouldn't discriminate against them, or what is it about them? Is it, no, you bring it right here. Say, no, I have a vision of myself with them. I have a vision of us in community. See, that's my vision. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Changes the discussion. Changes the discussion. You know, you don't even have to get into the merits of the this and that and whatever on the economy and the undocumented this and is it? No, I just have a vision of something else.
Ade says, so basically it's time to reset the default settings, referring to Rev D's analogy of a new computer.
You got it, baby. That's it. To reset the default settings. First off, to get off the default settings, to get off of them, and to set something new into motion. But it's insidious. It's just insidious, and we don't even realize that it's happening. We don't get it. Are there other comments?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said yourself that in the beginning, the denial is running through the whole thing from race, all of it. It's denial. It's not that we don't see. It's not that I don't see. It's that I don't want to see. That I ignore. I turn my head away. It's denial. It runs through addiction, through alcoholism, through politics, through the ecology, through everything. It's denial.
Well, yes, it's denial, but the point is that the systems have been designed to keep you in denial. That's it. It's not a personal denial. It's that the structures themselves have been designed so you do not have to see, that you do not have to look at it. And the denial is such that there's a complicity in it. And this is where the privilege comes in. When people say that I'm in denial, I'm trying to get through the gates. I can't make it through the gates. Okay. The Sufi gates are, is it true? Does it need to be said? And can it be said out of love with kindness? Yeah. And does it need to be said by me? Okay, I can make it to the gates. Let me just be really frank.
Please.
Yeah, let me be really frank. For the people who are marginalized, when they hear that, like, I'm just in denial or whatever, what really goes on internally is how dare you. That's really what goes on internally, is how dare you even throw that amount of privilege up in my face. That you even have the opportunity to be in denial. That you actually have some place that you can go where you can tune all this shit out and just act like it's not there. Wow, that must be really nice. I wonder what that's like to be able to just, I'm done with this conversation. I'm done. I'm just going to go home and whatever, do my little garden, and I'm not even going to think about this stuff. That there's some world that you could live in that would even give you the privilege to do that. That's what the other people are hearing. And that's what we don't say. It's like, wow, that must be really nice to even be able to be in that kind of a denial. I'm being reminded now of a conversation I had. This was years ago. And I used to be co-chair, national co-chair of the National Gay and Lesbian Task Force, one of the really big gay civil rights organizations. And my co-chair was a lawyer who put me in touch with a friend of his that he thought needed to have some help. So this guy was the first out person on the New York Stock Exchange trading floor. He's a third generation trader. And he was sharing his experience with me, and he honestly said this. He talked about what he was up against, and he said, and I was just so distraught, he said, that took 2 weeks out of my life. And I remember thinking, 2 weeks? And that you could actually codify it, that you could actually carve out how long you'd been inconvenienced. I had another similar conversation with a white guy who had gone to prison for something he was really, really guilty. And his sentence was so light. He was out in like 2.5 years or something like that. And he said the same thing. He said, this has taken 2 years, however many months, like days out of my life. And I'm thinking to myself, if you were Black, you'd still be up underneath the jail. And you can carve out like how inconvenienced you've been. It's just like, wow, wow. It's like, that's what other people hear. That may sound harsh, but that's what they hear. So whether it's couched as I'm blind or I don't see, or like I go into denial, what people are wanting in this verge towards the oneness is get in the trenches with us. Give up some of the privilege. Give up some of the entitlement. Give up some of the protections. Give up some of the being in denial so we can all push up our sleeves and get the job done of whatever it is that needs to get done. We already know it's denial. It isn't like that's a news flash because that's the piece that's so aggravating. The challenge now is not the horrific oppression of the ultra-conservative. The problem is the denial of the progressives. That's the problem. I am not doing this series to try to get through to ultra-conservatives. I am not. They are not the issue. The issue are the ones who think they are above it all, or it's all gone. They can live in their la-la land, and why don't we all just get along and not realizing that there's work to be done? That's why we're doing this stuff now. You know, and I hope that didn't come off as like ultra, ultra harsh, but that's just kind of the reality of it all. Are there some people on the video that wanna come in? Yes, Jean?
Unmute yourself.
Can you unmute yourself, Jean?
There's a great infographic that I'm seeing in my mind, and I'm thinking of Kaylee there in the room and graphic recording. This is going to be really easier for people to digest with a graphic. you know, there's a important visual here.
Good. Picture's worth 1,000 words. Picture's worth 1,000 words. This is good. Anybody else on the online or on the telephone? Unmute yourself if you're on the telephone. Lots of phone callers today. Okay, well, maybe they're not in the position to talk. Is there anybody else on online that wants to chime in here?
This is Caroline. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hello.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, so I wanted to respond to Jean, and I'd love to see your picture, because I draw pictures instead of writing to express a vision. So I've drawn a picture of my vision as part of participating in this process, and I don't have it with me. However, the vision is environmental sustainability with our animals and our planets and our waters and our trees, and in conjunction with social justice and spiritual consciousness. And this is not my vision, this is, the vision or our vision. And I have drawn a picture of it, and I look forward to sharing that at some point, perhaps.
Good.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We look forward to seeing that.
And if you're on the phone, I've been told that you *6 is how you unmute yourself. So if there's anyone on the phone that like to speak, you unmute yourself with *6.
And how do you remute yourself? I'm sorry, this is Caroline again.
Probably on your phone itself.
Same thing, *6.
*9.
*6.
Okay.
This is Linda. I think I'm unmuted.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. I'm really glad that you went ahead and said all that, Rev. And even better than a graphic would be a comic, like a New Yorker comic of some sort. I don't know what it looks like, but I'm sure somebody has one.
That would be.
But it's so much deeper. I mean, I don't feel like I'm in denial, but I do feel like I shut it off and on. Because most of the people that are around me haven't agreed upon looking at it all the time. And they don't want to bother themselves with it. It's just too messy, too difficult, too high and mighty, or whatever. I don't know. I mean, I am so glad to be linking arms with people and getting prepared or being prepared or preparing myself to get out of denial, be with it, talk to people on a real level. I've noticed since this class, I've had much more connected conversations with my friends of color. So I just want to say that.
Good. This is a skills building.
Yes.
This is skills building. And you can't predict the game ahead of time. You just come into the game with a set of skills, and you let the game come to you. I'm not suggesting that you go out and proselytize or beat people up or whatever. It's like stay awake. Let's be awake so that we get off of default. And then when we get off of default, we show up differently. there are other conversations to be had. There are new people to be met. There are different ways that we can go about doing this. I'm going to do a little switch gears. I handed something out to you today that I'm going to probably take back so you don't lose it.
Hey, Rep, I
Yes.
have a real desire to say something.
Yeah.
So Jean, I think you're onto something. I'm taken back to when you did the first diversity workshop. And some of the people of color there gave us an idea of what their inner dialogue was, which was brand new news to me because it's inner dialogue. I think about race when I get ready for work. I think about race when I get on the bus. I think about race when I know how loud I have to talk. I think about race when how close I stand to people. I think about race when I go into the bank. I think about race when I have to talk about my boss. Every single part of their internal dialogue was always monitored by race. My internal dialogue is never, ever about race. And I think this graphic, maybe of an internal dialogue about how I start my day, might be very, very instructive about the filter of race with people of color is never not there.
Exactly.
Ever.
Yes. And there was something I was going to go over today. We'll do it next time, but I'll just give you a taste of it. It was the stuff that I was saying I was going to take back. It was how this Jim Crow stuff works, how it works, and how it does filter everything. So there were just some examples of this and how it's been going on for so long. Technically speaking, these were outlawed in 1965, technically, but you know, culture, like how long it's going to take for things to get out of culture. So things like in the etiquette, blacks were introduced to whites, but never whites to blacks. Okay. So for example, Mr. Peters, the white person, this is Charlie, the black person that I spoke to you about. Whites did not use courtesy titles of respect when referring to blacks. For example, Mr., Ms., or whatever, or Sir. Instead, they would be called by their first names. Blacks had to use courtesy titles when referring to whites and were not allowed to call them by their first names. And it's to say, it's that in order to keep it going, everybody had to know their place. The white people had to know what they were supposed to say, and the black people had to know what they were supposed to say. The only difference is who's conscious of it or who's not. That's the only difference. Not that everybody wasn't operating by it, but just who was conscious of it or not. But those filters, yes, they were going on all the time. Is this right? Is this appropriate? What's going to happen here? And it was so sad. I was on the phone with somebody a couple of days or so ago, and they were just reading a news flash about a mulatto boy who had just been killed by the police in their city. I can't remember who I was talking to, because I have friends all over the place. I'll find out. And the cops had told him to lift up his hands, and he was starting to lift up his hands, but apparently his cell phone he had in his pocket like rang or started to vibrate, and without even thinking about it, he went for his cell phone and they killed him. And he was a mulatto, and his white mother was quoted as saying, "I never had the talk with him. I never had the talk." She never broke it down to him about the danger that his life was in, you know. And it's like we know, we sometimes know, we don't know. There's something that Kaylee sent me that I would like us to to be the last part of our session together, because I thought it was really good. It's an article from the New York Times. So that piece, that piece, keep in your hands. And I'm going to ask that can you do what she's doing? Can you put on the New York Times link? It's written by a woman named Deborah Fikes. And Deborah Fikes has been a very staunch evangelical. She previously served as a board member on the National Association of Evangelicals and as the executive advisor to the World Evangelical Alliance. She holds a graduate degree in international law from Oxford University. Okay, she's extremely well credentialed, and she does evangelical work all over the world. And I'd like to share this with you, if you lift it up a little bit so they can see under the picture. Yeah. So that's a photo of her in the middle there in Africa. And I'm just going to read this, and those of you who have it. Oh, you didn't pass it out. Okay. So what she's doing here is she's done a brilliant contrast of the U.S. evangelical positions on these social economic issues and where evangelicals stand around the world. And it bears witness to the things that I was talking about weeks ago when I was saying that the way that we did slavery and whatnot in the United States was very unique. The way that we did slavery and this extreme investment we still have on that idea of the individual and the individual and the individual. It's just so out of step with the whole rest of the world. And you hear me talking about we've got to learn how to be good global citizens and how to put forth a new vision. And I love the way that this woman kind of wraps some of this stuff up so that we see that some of us are not as far apart as we may seem to be. And I love the way that she captures here, I think, a good vision, a good place that we all can stand on. It says, many well-intentioned evangelicals have been drawn to the Republican Party platform with the hope of making an impact on culture and voting their values. But instead of actually helping fill in the quote unquote, the hole in our gospel, HOLE, as Richard Stern describes in his book of the same title, this focus has had the opposite effect, helping to create the imploding black hole of evangelical politics we are seeing now in the Republican Party. As painful as this has been to watch, this may be the best thing that has happened to America evangelism in a long time. For the first time in my life, I feel compelled to reject my community's unquestioned political alignment with the GOP and challenge my fellow evangelicals to reconsider. Over the past 16 years, I have volunteered my time helping evangelical churches around the world. I began this work by leading religious freedom advocacy for evangelical churches in the hometown of George W. Bush, which gave me a unique opportunity to observe the importance of who sits in the Oval Office. I also saw how easy it is for American evangelicals to be a politicized subculture, a tendency I see as detrimental to authentically living out our faith as Christ modeled for us to do. I'm going to repeat that one. I also saw how easy it is for American evangelicals to become a politicized subculture, a tendency I see as detrimental to authentically living out our faith as Christ modeled for us to do. From 2007 to 2016, I worked with the World Evangelical Alliance, where I represented 130 national alliances within a constituency of 600 million members. I traveled to many countries and saw how evangelicals engage politically all over the world. These observations come from that work. 1, only in the United States is climate change a controversial and politicized issue. Evangelicals in 129 countries support their government's efforts to face this challenge. 2, evangelicals in other countries do not consider a national healthcare system as a controversial issue. And in fact, they see it as highly desirable. 3, one of the highest priorities for a majority of evangelicals around the world is for their governments to combat poverty and hunger, improve public education, and provide clean water for all citizens, even if it means paying more taxes. 4, evangelicals from other countries want to see their governments buy fewer weapons and invest in economic development and peace initiatives. 5, globally, evangelicals disapprove of torture being used by their governments in any form. 6, a majority of evangelicals around the world view capital punishment as barbaric. 7, our evangelical brothers and sisters cannot comprehend that American evangelicals are so overwhelmingly opposed to any gun control reform. 8, nuclear disarmament and eventual abolition of nuclear weapons is not even questioned amongst the vast majority of evangelicals in other countries. 9, except for countries with high populations of Muslims, protecting vulnerable LGBT citizens and other social justice issues are not viewed as being part of a quote unquote liberal agenda. 10, whether abortion is legal or illegal, a majority of evangelicals in other countries have not prioritized this in their politics. Where abortion is illegal, evangelicals are more concerned about the high rate of maternal deaths that result from quote unquote bedroom abortions. 11, evangelicals in other countries working to help refugees and internally displaced people have questioned if Americans who support Mr. Trump are reading from a different Bible, because theirs is very clear that quote unquote welcoming the stranger is a Judeo-Christian priority. All of these stances are viewed as pro-life and pro-family. Our evangelical brothers and sisters around the world cannot understand how or why the majority of American evangelicals support Donald Trump. They have coined a new word, American ideo-evangelicals, to describe that in the US, who are voting more for their political ideology than for their faith values. Evangelicals from all regions, not particularly in Africa, no, not evangelicals from all regions, but particularly in Africa, consider Hillary Clinton a quote unquote sister in Christ and someone who lives out the golden rule and all that she has done for women and children. Many affectionately call her Sister Hillary. In the coming months and years, as this unprecedented election and its consequences filter down, my hope and prayer is that American evangelicals will become less ideo-evangelical and more like our global brother and sister evangelicals, who I believe live out a more holistic gospel faith in the political sphere. It is also my hope that the Democratic Party will seize the opportunity to reach out, particularly to younger evangelicals who recognize the importance of healthy parameters for church/state separation and are exploring where they can vote their values for a more pragmatic, holistic, less politicized gospel. We need to listen to them and help lead a path forward if we truly seek to live out our gospel faith's greatest command in loving one's neighbor as oneself.
Amen.
Isn't this beautiful?
Yes. Oh, nailed it.
And I give this to you not as a document about Republican versus Democrat.
No. Yeah.
I give this to you as a document of vision.
Yes.
And to show, I think, unequivocally that this vision that most of us have talked about, that I think is in alignment with these points that she's raised here, is not going against religious beliefs. It's not going against sort of the gospel of Jesus or anything like that. And trying to put this wedge between us politically around religion is a red herring. It does not exist. And I would contend that if you take out the folks who are sort of on the extreme of conservatism, that you're going to find more people who are actually sitting in this spot than anything else. And I feel like these are great talking points. These are great talking points when the conversations come up beyond Republican, beyond Democrat, and whatever, and just capital punishment's barbaric. You know, what about the mothers who are dying from these, illegal abortions? What about all these refugees? What about all these people that we personally have displaced? We created 2 million refugees in Iraq alone that we won't take in. Like, where's the hospitality in, loving our neighbor as ourselves? It's like, where is all of that? What I'm saying is that there's a way that you can stand for something without standing against a lot of other people. You don't have to be combative. You don't have to be argumentative. But if you just stand on your vision, I have a vision of healthcare for all. I have a vision that everybody should be able to be healthy. And even if it's just our own self-interest, I don't know, maybe it's just me. But if we have a caste system and everybody at the bottom are the ones cooking the food and changing the beds and doing everything for everybody else, don't you want them to be healthy?
Yes. Hello.
It's not like we've got separate air. It's not like, come on. How do you even, it's like, I don't get it. I don't get it. So without judging people, demonizing people, when we can see, look, there's common ground here. Let's not do the same thing that everybody else is doing and talk about, the evangelicals, the Republicans, the Trump people. It becomes that it and not the I thou. That's not the place we want to go to. You just speak vision And whoever is up and able to resonate with that vision, let them come. Don't worry about the ideology. Don't worry about who's where, whether they're atheists or evangelical. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. There's a higher calling that's calling us all up. By any chance, did you print out that page, the actual page of the email that has the links on it?
I did. Is it on the HP maybe?
I want to give you a copy of these links.
Yeah. Oh,
And to those of you,
Is it this?
to those of you who are listening in or whatnot, this is the New York Times from August 19th. August 19th this year. So it's hot off the press. And her name is Deborah Fikes. Fikes. Deborah, she spells it my name, the long way. Deborah Fikes, Fikaes. And it's on the opinion pages, a challenge to my fellow evangelicals. A challenge to my fellow evangelicals. And I just love this. And I want to say thank you, Kaylee, for sending this to me. And once again, to show we've got to get in step. As Americans, we have to get in step with the rest of the world. Because I can guarantee you, if this is what the evangelicals think in the world, can you imagine what No, I'm really serious. It's like, if that's what they're thinking, that it's time for us to catch up. Exactly. It's time for us to put forth a big, bold vision that's not stuck in all this other stuff, and for us to be able to be free. Yes?
Yes.
Yeah, makes sense. So those other handouts we'll go over the next time. But I didn't want to share this with you. So online, or those of you who are listening on the telephone, did you have any comments or responses? I can see the people in the room with me, so I know where they are. *6 if you want to unmute yourself on the telephone.
Hi, this is Marcia.
Okay.
Hi. The only thing I wanted to say is, like, I've been really quiet and just taking all of this in as one of those progressives. I don't know whether to call it denial or whatever, but just really taking it in and noticing how all of these things are now in front of me. Like when you buy a new car and then you see that car everywhere.
Yes.
It's like, I'm not only am I seeing the racism, my own thinking, but books are coming to me, videos are coming to me, and so I just feel like I'm deep in a process, and I thank God for it, that it's coming. But the big thing for me, and I think you mentioned forgiveness last week.
Yes.
And I feel like I'm in a very, very huge forgiveness process of self-forgiveness, and kind of Ho'oponopono style, where everything that I see is me. And so all I have to do is forgive myself, and I'm forgiving it all. And so I just wanted to say that because it feels really important to me as a tool that I'm using as I'm walking through this process.
Yes.
That's it.
That's very good, because forgiveness is where we're going to start going next week into some deep,
okay. Well, I'll be there
about this, to unleash the energy, within us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I appreciate that. Anybody else on the telephone? *6.
Elizabeth's raising her hand.
Oh, okay. Let me do telephones first. Okay, bring in Elizabeth.
Elizabeth?
Yeah. How do I keep this short? So what I have been feeling in me when if I have times where I do feel like I am the police, and that is not a good place for me to be in.
Say that again, that you're at what?
Like being the police, like
Police, okay.
yeah. So, and that is lack because I have not been able to speak vision. You know, you see all this stuff going on, and so I felt like I've been not heard and not found any of my people. Yeah. So, so being in that position, to be, you know, walking around feeling like I kind of feel like I'm the police, that is not a healthy spot for me to be in.
No.
So that, at some points, I do just shut down, kind of. Not shut, that's not the word I want to use, but I just close in, or just, you know, you just close your eyes and senses to what's going on. And that is because, you know, if I was able to speak a vision more clearly, then I don't think I would do that.
Exactly.
I would have to do that.
Yes, exactly. And that's why we're going to start talking about the forgiveness, because when you're in forgiveness, you don't have to police. And what it really boils down to is the heart. That the only thing that really needs to be healed is the sense of separation. The biggest danger in being the police is the self-righteousness that allows you to separate and feel once again the supremacy that somehow you're better than they are.
Yeah. And that is exactly.
I know that's a harsh way to put it.
No, but I know. I agree. And that is where I've been coming from.
Yes. And that's what's got to end.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who thinks that they're better than everybody else. It's the fact that we think it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So your charge now is love. Instead of policing, can you love?
Yeah, more and more.
Yes.
More and more every day.
Yes. And we'll come back to that next week. Thank you for that honesty. You always put it out there.
Oh, you're welcome.
I appreciate that. Okay, so we will come back same time.
Are we going
Next
to
week on Monday?
Labor Day?
We're not going to do Monday of Labor Day. So we'll do this coming Monday, whatever that is, and then we will skip a Monday. You know, and I just have to say this. My mother's 91 today.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, and she was born in Jim Crow, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So just the journey and the walk and all of that, you know, it's really something. And just to be able to be here now, me here now, considering what life was like for her when she was born, it's really a testament to the fact that things really can change. With vision, they really can change. And God knows what things can be 91 years from now. Yeah.
I'm Milo, and I just really want to thank you. It is only by the willingness of yourself to be authentic and potentially harsh. I can't see the chasm between intention and impact unless you share what it looks like. That's right. And I so appreciate the vulnerability and the courage that I assume it takes, whether it does or not.
No, it does.
And I have a question, and I'm really curious about this. Why is it so easy for us to model ourselves after impish or devilish behaviors, so to speak, and it's so impossible for us to really claim, no, my vision is to be Christ. My vision is to be love. And I don't understand why that is. I don't understand.
Well, part of it, and we can get into this more later, I realize it's late and people are needing to go. Part of it is that the way that we have used Christianity as a weapon of control. And as a weapon of control, the historic message of Christianity is that you are bad. Is that you are bad and that you are sinful. And that it actually is irreligious and irreverent, sacrilegious to consider yourself to be fundamentally good and somehow connected or whatever to God. So, you know, the hymns, the songs, the prayers, you know, I am not worthy, you know, I've born in sin, I'm sinful, I am guilty, I'm this or that. You know, that's been throughout the Roman Empire for a couple thousand years now, the rhetoric that we've all kind of bought into. So it becomes our starting point. We're all born in sin. And that's why this work becomes so important, is to set a new tone and to set a new vibration of possibility that goes in the face of that and challenges that and says fundamentally, that's not true. It's like, that is an overlay. That is a socio-political overlay for the purposes of control.
Right. Yes. Like Dave says that.
You know, that's the okie doke. Remember I talked about we've been bamboozled.
Yeah.
And because then you're not good enough. You need a savior. You need something in between to save you and make you good enough and lift you up. So you need a church. You need the king. You need the state. You need all these things because you're not good enough. Then you become beholden to all this other stuff that you think you have to turn to because they're bigger than you, better than you, and then you spend all of your time being in service to them in turn for their salvation that they're going to give you from your unworthiness. So it becomes a nice, neat little system that goes on there that is the okie doke, we've been bamboozled.
Wow.
So thank you for asking that question, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Okay, let's stand. Let's go out on I give myself permission.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So, yeah, the Jim Crow stuff you can give back. Donations, greatly appreciated. Anybody wants to swipe her, but let's sing out on I give myself permission. Okay? The words are, I give myself permission to be all I can be. I give myself permission to live passionate and free. I give myself permission to be all I can be. I give myself permission to live passionate and free. I give myself permission to be all I can be. I give myself permission to live passionate and free. Let us take this consciousness and multiply it. All right. All right. Everybody get that hand on the